I remember clearly as I sat down to the sofa and I didn't have another way. I didn't know what to do. So I told her how I felt. And I remember already after just having shared that with her, I started to feel better. It's almost like I had almost like a V-shaped recovery. And it's that saying, a problem shared is a problem halved.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?
Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Nick Jonsson. He's the world's leading authority on executive loneliness, a term he coined to spotlight the silent struggles of senior leaders. Nick, as I mentioned, I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of questions on just from personal experience on this topic. But first, I want to start by saying thank you. Thank you for coming on the show today. We already talked about, kind of the varying time zones you're working in. So I appreciate you taking the time to come and chat with me and be a part of the show.
Fantastic to be here, and thank you for covering a topic that perhaps have been avoided for some time. It's full of stigma and so on. So let's talk about executive loneliness.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's dive in. Let's talk about your background, kind of what got you to where you are today, and I'm sure I'll have lots of questions.
Yeah, so Jason, in short, I was born in Sweden, educated in Australia, and then now I lived the last 21 years in Southeast Asia. Working my way up the corporate ladder, you could say, elbowing myself to the top. 10 years ago, then I had turned 40, and perhaps a 40 years crisis kicked in. And I started questioning myself, challenge myself, and I wasn't happy. I felt lonely, isolated. I resigned from a well-paid job without having a new plan, and that was basically the start of my fall. I went through a couple of years of huge challenges, managed to eventually crawl out of the ashes and come back to life. So that's my life story in a short intro.
Yeah, that's walking away from kind of that high paying executive job. I'm sure was a challenging time and must have. It's got to be pretty significant in terms of the pain that you're facing, things like that, to make that feel like the right move. Would you kind of walk us through a little bit more about that? What really was the driver behind that decision?
Yeah, so I was at that time in a medical organization in Indonesia as a GM. We were managing 72 hospitals and clinics, 1,400 staff. I was responsible for medical services and business development. So I did well in the role in terms of getting new clients, retain clients, and so on. But it came with a technicality that perhaps was overwhelming for me. There was a lot of operational issues, terms that I didn't really know. I worked with a lot of operations and doctors and so on, and I could sit in meetings and have no idea sometimes what they were talking about, but I was too shy to admit it. So I tried to put on that face that I have all the answers, know everything, but over time it was just compounded, more and more of insecurities, more anxieties. Maybe I did something wrong, and I was even too scared to talk to my boss about it, despite that I knew the boss very well. In fact, we used to have barbecues together on the weekend and talk about everything in life apart from the work and apart from my feelings. I didn't express my concerns and so on. So I figured that, rather than being caught out on some of the mistakes that I perhaps had done, I thought it's better that I take charge. So that went on my mind when I resigned from this job. I just had played it in my own head too many times. Something must be wrong. I will be terminated. And that was something I couldn't live with. I had lost 2 jobs early in my career, and I wasn't ready to be terminated a third time. So with that, I resigned and left it without even consulting anyone. Even my ex-wife was widely surprised when I said I resigned. And when she challenged me, then I also filed for divorce. I wasn't ready to have that conversation with her either.
Wow. Well, that's a big moment in life. So from that stems the concept around executive loneliness. I mean, I'm sure the concept was already there, but But what were your, I don't know, what did you do to kind of come back from that? You said you sort of rose from the ashes and kind of find a way out. Those are all, those are life-changing events. And I've been divorced. I know how hard that can be to sort of come back through, but at the same time, resigning from your job. I mean, all of that is a lot of compounding challenge. So where do you start to pick up the pieces?
Yeah, so after that loss of job, after the divorce, I went in a shell basically for 3 years, isolating, jumping from job to job, failing at everything, burning through my life savings, making stupid investments, trading my gym membership for a bar stool, healthy diet to fast food and pizza. I gained about 60 pounds. And with that, I was really, really unhealthy, but I wasn't ready to express it yet. I had to hit rock bottom first, and that took me about 3 years until I couldn't cope anymore. And you could say that I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that was when I started to ask for help, and that was the turning point. And I hadn't until that moment, discussed any of the feelings inside my job and the transition, as I was just jumping from place to place and never really building any strong relationships. And I shared some posts of social media now and making sure that everything looked good on the outside, but clearly on the inside, everything was falling apart until I managed to take to get myself together and ask for help.
I think that's probably more common than people want to admit. That we, but two things about that. One, I think you really do have to be. You have to be ready to ask for help, accept help, sort of face those challenges. But also, I think that the putting on that sort of external picture, especially with social media, putting on that external picture of everything's fine, don't worry, it's all I've got it all together, and I think that's probably a pretty common thing out in the world with people. Kind of struggling, looking successful from externally, but not feeling that, sort of internally. When did you, I guess I would better phrased, where did you start? You sort of said you hit rock bottom. What do you do to start to turn that around? You're finally ready to ask for help. And, I'm sure people listening, this is going to resonate with them, and they maybe haven't reached that point of being able to ask for help or even acknowledge what they're going through. But talk to us about that, sort of turnaround.
Are you planning a remodel or construction project? Overwhelmed by the process? Over budget? Extended timelines? Strained relationships? We are all too familiar. At Lark Construction Services, we help homeowners and business owners take control of their construction journey, from reviewing bids and contracts to catching red flags before they become costly mistakes. Our Clarity Audit is a one-on-one expert review of your plans, estimates, or current progress, giving you the peace of mind and a defined action plan to move forward with confidence. Don't let confusion lead to costly errors. Visit larkconstruction.com and schedule your free call today. Lark Construction Services, saving you time, money, and stress.
Yeah, so at that moment, and I remember it clearly, it was April 2018, and I did my best to escape from everything I could. At the time, I had some part-time job just giving me enough money working from home, but I wasn't ready to go out and face people. I can remember being invited for a face-to-face meeting, basically 500 meters from my place. I just couldn't show up for it. I wasn't ready to do it. But then what happened changed everything, because my left foot basically got swollen like an elephant foot. And I then started to panic and wonder what's going on here. I went to doctors, they x-rayed it and did MRIs. They couldn't find anything. They checked it for gout, couldn't find any problems. But when I did a blood test and stuff like that, of course, they found that, my kidney and liver and so on was not the best, because I've been drinking too much alcohol. I was overweight, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Things were off and it didn't look good. But then with the foot, it was no problem with that as they could find. And that kept me more puzzled, what is happening here? And it was only later on diagnosed actually by a psychiatrist as a psychosomatic illness. So that had compounded and built up over a few years as I kept everything secret, all the issues in my workplace not dealt with. And still until this point, 4 years later, when I'm at my rock bottom, I still hadn't shared it with anyone. And 3 years then failing in everything, including the divorce also, and not being there for my son, who I separated from. I couldn't show up even as a father. Then living with all that shame and guilt internally had made me so sick. And because I didn't express it, it showed up on my foot. And with that, then, luckily I was blessed. I'd met someone who's my wife today, remarried happily. And I then shared with her this story. I shared how I felt internally. And as I did that, and I remember clearly as I sat her down to the sofa, and I didn't have any another way. I didn't know what to do. So I told her how I felt. And I remember already after just having shared that with her, I started to feel better. It's almost like I had almost like a V-shaped recovery. And it's that saying, a problem shared is a problem halved. And I understood that that moment is what it means. When you have something that you're going through and you share it with someone, by just vocal it, you're feeling better. And you won't believe it, that in the next following days after that, she took also, this to heart, and she gave me the support. She took me to a doctor. She took me to a friend who had gone through some challenges before. And for every person I met, I started to feel better, and I had that feeling something was lifted from me. And with that, then the swollen foot disappeared without any treatment or means, by itself. And after about a week, yes, I started to eat better again also. And as a miracle, as a part of this also, I joined a support group for my alcohol issues. And I walked out of that meeting on May 5, 2018, and I haven't had an alcoholic drink. So all these urges and all these problems I had were lifted from me reasonably quickly as soon as I took ownership, asking for help.
That's amazing. I've never heard that a problem shared is a problem halved in it. It is that's a really powerful statement. I think the idea. I mean, I've had some guests talk about sort of a similar concept, I guess, and I've heard other people, other podcasts talk about the challenges of essentially anticipation and anxiety over having that hard conversation, over having, sort of just acknowledging the problem, that a large part of the problem is just not facing the problem, right? It's the procrastination, it's all of that. And so, yeah, you can have it eat away at you and cause real physical problems as you experience, but it's like, not uncommon for me. I said, I have some of these same, the executive loneliness concept hits home, and I'll have stretches of really bad sleep because I'm thinking about this thing that's bothering me. And it's like, usually talking about it, going to whoever that person is, or whoever, facing whatever that problem is, I'll sleep like a baby the next night after doing it. So you can fairly rapidly and effectively sort of turn those things around. So that's amazing. And congratulations to you for doing that. Where did you go from there? I mean, when did the book come into play? What was the pathway from there?
Yeah, so as I was in, then should we call it recovery, starting to be sober and taking ownership for my stuff, there was a lot of work I needed to do. I had to make amends and fix relationships that were broken, with my ex-wife, and that had to be cleared up. I had to become a father again. I was absent for 3 years. It was time to heal that relationship. I also had to get back into a relationship with my sister. We had stopped communicating, and all these broken relationships were my fault. So I had to take ownership and repair them. And I got coaches, I got mentors, and also through the recovery program, then the 12 steps is part of that, is part of healing relationships. I got support with a sponsor, and I spent then a year, you can say, to go through the 12 steps. Typically, they say go through a step per month. So over a year, I was making fantastic progress, and I was just feeling better and better and more alive than I ever done in my life. And then what happened, just 1 year into my recovery, something happened that would change my life forever. Until this moment, my story and my recovery journey was shared inside the confidential spaces of the recovery group with my close family and close friends, but there was no one on the outside who knew. People could see I lost some weight and that I was coming back to life and healthy again, but people don't really care about that. No one really dug deep to find out what was going on. Yeah. But then suddenly a friend of mine died to suicide, a successful friend in the corporate world, and I just had met him a week before for coffee. We were working on a project together, and when he didn't show up, I was full of fear, wondering what happened. And when it was confirmed later on from his family that it was a suicide, that's when I took action, and I did something that again would really change my life. I called up a suicide prevention agency, signed up as a volunteer and fundraiser for this agency in Singapore. And as soon as the page went live, collecting money and raising awareness, I also made a LinkedIn post with a video that I posted, went out for a run. And as I came back to my computer, I saw something I'd never seen before. I had hundreds of incoming messages on LinkedIn from people all around the world, giving their support, donating money, and the post was shared endless of times. So that was then the next starting point of and what eventually became a book as well, because journalists from all over around the world, also even TV, radio, and so on, wanted to hear about this story.
Wow. I mean, that's powerful. The fact that took off like that, in the span of your run, kind of going viral like that on something obviously tragic, and sort of personal, but it shows you just how needed and I guess widespread that this problem is, that it became, so viral so quickly, where everybody, all these people, it resonated with them, what you had posted. I'd imagine that's, truly very motivating to then share your story. And I mean, I come from the veterinary world, and in the US, it's the highest or one of the highest suicide rates of all professions. And so it's something that's like sort of unfortunately, I don't want to say common, but it is, we all have someone, we all know someone that was, took their own life, and it's just kind of a very scary. It's scary when you for your example in the book, I would imagine that friend could have benefited from your book. They could have had maybe the tools to sort of avoid this. And I think that's kind of similarly, by talking about these things in whatever space, you can hopefully help someone else, like literally save a life. So I think it's a really powerful tool, and hopefully the book, or hearing this podcast, hearing your story, will help people recognize the power of reaching out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the whole point here, right? That I didn't know what was happening, neither did his family. And we had no idea that he was going through a difficult time. And in fact, he had just done some things that was really part of, living a dream. He had been to Mount Everest base camp. He was fit. He was healthy. He shared pictures very recently before this incident on Facebook with his girlfriend, saying that he's never been happier, So he portrayed everything on the outside that it was perfect when it clearly wasn't. And I call that in my book a smiling depression. When we're portraying something that everything is so great, it's just because we are scared of someone being, digging too deep. That's what I did as well. I was posting those happy photos and reposting old photos that look great when I was even sick, just to make sure that no one would find out. But if we're able to find out, then we can prevent it. That's all it is. Because what I learned, and I'm studying now to become a counselor and therapist, is that, if we can give someone another way, then it doesn't mean that the path is suicide. We can give someone another solution, and all it takes is perhaps that we give them that safe space and a channel to speak about. And the messages I received that day after my run was from people who had lost someone, people who said, thank you for talking about this topic. It's a non-spoken about topic because of the stigma. And this was 1998. 99, sorry. We now had a pandemic that changed that a little bit. It became more normal to not being okay, and we could talk more about mental health, and we could have these conversations of isolation to another level. And that's where we are now. And it's about normalize these conversations. So if we can have these difficult conversations in the good times when things are good, and being vulnerable and open about them and putting them on the table to talk about it, then when the challenging times comes, then hopefully we build those relationships where we are comfortable to talk about them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that hopefully this is changing, but I think that we have a picture, a lot of people have a picture in their head of what someone who is depressed and would commit suicide looks like. And we almost always hear like, oh, I never would have thought that person, like that's almost always the story afterwards. And so it's like, maybe we need to really listen to that so often people close to those that take their own lives are shocked. And so, it means we don't always know what people are going through. Certainly we it's very easy to paint a picture of success and happiness on social media. So it's we don't always know what people are experiencing, but also I would say just, importantly to checking in on our friends, even the ones that friends, family, like even the ones that seem happy, right? It's like everything, just being a support system and having these open conversations, so incredibly valuable. Nick, in the book, do you talk about essentially what leads to being in this state of executive loneliness? Like, I guess maybe my question is, what are some of the warning signs that people can be on the watch for?
Yeah, and I would say that there's two sides to this. It's us as an individual, but then it's the company and the corporate culture as well. And it depends on where you are in the organization. I address the book at the executive level, the top, because if a company is to change, it cannot change from the lower or middle end. The middle managers are not going to be able to change the culture and making everyone vulnerable and feeling safe. So I'm talking about psychological safety here. It has to start at the top. The CEO needs to make a statement that this is a place where we can ask for help. We can open up if we have some difficulties in our job. We shouldn't be scared to admit that it was a failure, but rather looking at what we can learn from that. The issue in my story and that on many others was, and I worked in the medical industry, that, we didn't speak up about challenges. We were terrified because we saw some people being penalized for it. Instead, we did everything we could to look good, to make everything impressive, hitting our targets, KPIs, and showing our successes. And therefore, we weren't vulnerable about it. And being in such a company where we then have to keep our secrets and our challenges and potentially errors and mistakes even inside us, knowing that something is not right, that's going to make us sick eventually. And that is the whole issue here. So to answer the question, then, yeah, it's the leaders, it's the companies, it's the boards who need to create a psychological safety culture in the organization where we dare to speak up. And us as individuals, we can still do it in other places. If you're a middle manager or someone on now listening saying, I cannot change that in my company, well, then maybe you can change it in your family or in your community, in the clubs and associations where you belong, and with your friends. You can be the leading light. You can be the person who talk a little bit about your challenges, because when I talk a lot about the vulnerability muscle, it's almost like the muscles we're building in the gym, where we can open up step by step and building that trust. And especially for us men, it's very much needed. We men tend to have a good time together and but rather not wanting to bother our friends with what is happening in our life, so we can all learn to be a little bit more vulnerable.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it's something that I think they don't mean to, but my kids have taught me a bit about that, and just that they're young, and it's you learn about kind of topics like we're talking about today, and start to think about, well, what can I do, as you said, within your families, within your close circles, what can I do to teach my kids to speak up if they're feeling, they're struggling, they're having anxiety, whatever it is. And so I think that the best way to teach is to just lead by example and show, you're having a hard day, having a bad time. Like, I try to tell them that. I try to apologize. Like, this is not how Daddy wants to be today, that kind of thing. And so I think just letting them understand how that dynamic plays out, even in myself, hopefully allows them to have that the freedom to have some vulnerability in themselves in their future. So it's a very, very powerful tool. What are your plans? You said you're studying to be a therapist. I mean, this is a needed topic, a needed space, more communication. What are your plans for the future? How do you see your impact beyond the book growing?
Yeah, since the book was released and in 2020, it became a bestseller quite quickly in the US, UK, Australia, and Canada, especially in the categories of men's health and mental health. It was filling a very much needed gap to talk about this, while the book in itself is not just for men. It just happens that that's the category that picked it up and still pick it up. I educated myself then to the highest level that I could as a coach, ICF coach, and I'm also certified in sobriety coaching. So I'm working especially with men, typically men who perhaps have gone through a divorce, because with that many times comes a lot of isolation and challenges, and they need someone to hold their hand when they go through that, both personally and professionally. Balancing then the executive coaching related to the work and the life coaching, how to get the life on track and the health and so on. So the things that I was lacking when I went through my journey and made it so expensive, so painful, those 3 years, I'm now helping others to walk through that. So rather than having that 3 years and ruin yourself, go through these challenging steps with someone. So that's my work on an individual level as a coach, and that's why I'm now doubling down and keep upskilling myself, and also to do the therapy and the counseling work. So by end of the year I will be certified in that. Then also what I do is I run a men's group for all my coaching clients, where basically they can join this men's group, and it's almost like the 12-step programs, but you don't have to have an alcohol problems or drug issue to join it. But it's a safe space where we get online, we have a call on Zoom for 1 hour and frequently, and we had one of our calls today, and it's just to checking in, sharing what we're going through in our lives. And if you can imagine 20 guys on a call, the roller coaster of life. There will be someone there who just lost perhaps a parent or a partner, or someone will be sick, someone has lost a job. A few on every call will have suicidal thoughts, and they will vocal them and express them and talk about them to normalize this, and then we uncover that together. We're there to support each other. We also have then a group chat, a WhatsApp group, where we check in every day, and everyone is asked to, the first thing in the morning, to write a short gratitude list to say what they are grateful for. So it sets a positive scene, a stage, basically start the day in a positive manner. So that's sort of where I am now and where I'm going to give that support and to prevent what happened to my friend Simon when he died of suicide. I don't want more of those around me.
Yeah. I mean, all of that sounds like it would be very powerful for the people in the group, and it is, yeah. When you have one person, one person on that list that was gone too soon, that you definitely don't want the list to grow, and I think that's it's just it's hard to. It's one of those things that for me personally, I find it hard to understand, but at the same time, not. I don't know. I almost have like two divergent thoughts around it, because it's like I find it hard to understand because there's people that depend on me and that I love, and I want to be around them for as long as possible. But at the same time, when someone, again, if I just point to the veterinary communities, there's a suicide in the veterinary community. It's not hard for me to understand what the actual pressures are that person has been, experiencing, what their feelings are, and so it's like it's a very kind of strange, like I said, divergent thought path of like, well, I don't want to do that, but I also like trying to understand, like, I guess where people are coming from and what those experiences are that lead to suicidal thoughts and actual, the process itself is I'm sure a big part of what you're doing and helping the men in your group. Maybe kind of, if you're talking openly about it and someone hears someone else say, X, and you're like, oh yeah, I've felt that way too. I think that can be a really valuable exercise to just talk through those things and have it be, kind of out in the open.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about sharing the toolbox. And we don't give each other direct advice in the group, but we can share from lived experiences of if for the ones who lost a job or perhaps going through a company that is going bankrupt, then, there's a lot of pain there. There's loss not only financially, but also the reputation and the loss of colleagues. And it's a lot of things that is going through the mind to then speak with someone else who's been there before, who also perhaps faced financial challenges or a business going bankrupt, for example. Then they need someone to speak to. So I can understand your community there as you're talking about the vets. A vet can talk to someone else who have gone through something similar and lift each other and understand each other at a completely different level.
Yeah. I think you just finding your community, your similar, like-minded groups that will understand the challenges that you're facing. And I love how you said kind of sharing the toolbox of, I went through this divorce. How did I deal with it? Maybe not well, but these are the things that kind of helped me get through it. So I think that's just an incredibly powerful space to have. Well, Nick, this is a incredibly deep and powerful conversation, and I appreciate the vulnerability. I don't know why that word's so hard today. Vulnerability that you have shown in talking about it, and obviously that seems to be your mission. I always ask every guest, what is your why? The name of the show is Know Your Why, and I think we've talked a lot about probably some of what would be a part of your why, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of expand on it. Anything you'd like to add with that? What's driving you forward after kind of going through the experiences that you have.
Yeah, and I love that. I think it's very important to look for our why, to think, what is the reason? Why am I born, or why was I born? And for me, it became quite clear in 2019 around Simon's suicide. And I remember that people tried to stop me. People said, Nick, you're crazy. You're going on radio and TV to talk about suicide. You're going to destroy your career. No one will ever hire you again. And, many people were trying to stop me and prevent me from going forward with my mission. I remember at that time that I was driven by something bigger than myself. I was almost electric. There was no one that could stop me. I didn't listen to anyone. I just kept moving with a mission. And I remember clearly the words I said. I said something like, if I can prevent just one suicide, then my life will be worth living. That cause in itself was bigger than what everyone else said. The fact that I might not be able to get a life insurance or medical insurance, the fact that no big MNC would ever hire me again, that didn't matter, because just be able to be there and prevent one suicide was already a bigger cause. And I'm not here to rag or show off now, but I have messages and conversations with at least plus 20 men since those days who say that, Nick, I'm here thanks to you. And I'm getting these messages. I got one very emotional on a Christmas Eve from one man who wrote it. And this was a guy that I had not even worked very closely with. It was someone who read my book and followed me on social media. And he wrote and said that as I'm looking out over the ocean, I just want you to be aware that I'm alive today because of your messages and your support work that you do out there. And that keep me going. And that's why I'm here with you today, Jason. And that's the message worth spreading. And I want to thank you also and all the listeners for joining that.
Yeah, it's in the business world. There's a lot of talk about numbers, metrics, KPIs. I mean, we talk about business revenue, and can you get your revenue to this number or double it, or we talk a lot about math, and I like that stuff's interesting to me, but literally saving one life, like by talking about things, just by being open about experiences, and like that's the really powerful point. And it's business and turning profits, all that, it all matters to keep the world running, but you can also be empathetic and vulnerable and available to people that need help without sacrificing the other things. Like I think it's just it's I don't know. Maybe it's naive, but I think it's a lot simpler than necessarily it gets made out to be. There's just being kind to others and having that openness, I think, just goes so long. And like you said, just you're doing it because even if you save one life and you've saved many, which is kind of an unmeasurable, can't create a KPI out of this, but it's worth so much more. So yeah, I think it's amazing. Nick, when people hear this and they want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, so there's a few ways. I'm quite active on LinkedIn, and it's Nick Jonsson, NickJonsson. They can look me up there. If they're interested in checking out my book, then it's on Amazon. It's called Executive Loneliness. It's also as an audio book on Audible. Looking forward to hearing from anyone who's been on the show today. Yeah. We'll make sure all of that's in the show notes for them. Well, Nick, again, thank you so much for all that you shared with your story, the vulnerability, everything that you're doing to help people. I think it's amazing. I'm inspired and really appreciate you being here to share this with us today. So thank you so much. Fantastic. Thank you too.
Folks listening, make sure you connect with Nick, pick up his book. Please like, rate, and review the show so we continue to get more great guests. And as always, thank you for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?